Hello and welcome back to the Tarly Chester YouTube channel. Today we're going to be going over episodes 5 and 6 of Chess Masters The Endgame. Unfortunately, I did not do an episode last week, purely because the 3 pawn race for both the 2nd and the 5th episode were both lost, and most of the other stuff you could see, so I thought I'd just make it into one big video to make it a little bit easier for everyone to watch. Hopefully you will enjoy. If you do, please leave a like and subscribe, and if you want to leave a comment down below, please tell me what you think of the video. We're going to be going over, first of all, the queen puzzle here. I'm going to be going over my solution here, where I missed out 2 squares. With my basic idea being here, just starting off, queens are more active in the centre. If you simply see queen here, you can see that it's got all of these squares to move to. It's got more squares than any other square on the board, being in these centre squares here. It's just simply the most active place for the queen to be. If the queen is on the corner of the board, it can only go in these directions here, which is a lot less than it is in the centre of the board. So my first thing was to put a queen in the centre of the board. And then simply, I know that the queen's only direction it can't move to is like a knight's move away. So I just positioned my queens a knight's move away. And then for some reason, I didn't think to complete the pattern. If I did complete the pattern, I would have been through without any issue here, because this covers all 64 squares with the queens being in these spaces here. But at the time, my strategy was put all the queens down as quickly as possible, and then don't move the queens until I come up with a better solution. And unfortunately, in the 2 minutes we were given, I couldn't come up with a better solution. About 10 seconds after the puzzle finished, I was able to work it out that the other queen should have gone to here. But I put the queen to here. And, you know, I was happy with that because I got all these queens down in about 6 seconds. And then I just didn't touch them after that. So I didn't get any time penalty for that. So I was able to be about a minute and a half quicker than everyone else. Which, for me, I'm happy with. I don't need to kind of improve on this. If I moved it here, it would have made a lot more sense. But at the end of the day, I can't have everything. And I just missed this move here. So, unfortunately, I did only get 62. But that was luckily just enough to get me in. Craig also managed to get 62. But they were not quick enough to get ahead on time. The solution that they showed on the show, I did not expect. It was something along the lines of the queens all going down this way over here, which is not a solution I would have probably expected here, because obviously they're all on the same diagonal, which I thought would have been strange. Here, if the queen had gone down here, also it would have been relatively easy to work out where all the queens would have had to go, because you can work out with the queen being there that all of these rows are all full up here. And the same with all the rows up and down here. And then you just have to work out what the remaining squares are, which is just these ones, these ones, these ones, and these ones, and see if they are covered. And they all are covered by the queens on different squares here. I'm going to be going over onto game 2 now, just because obviously that's what we do. And the 3 pawns race, as I said, was missed. We didn't get that recorded for the show. We just didn't get the PGNs for it. There wasn't a set to record those PGNs. So instead, we're going to go straight onto the Eliminator of week 5, which was Craig versus Kel. This was going to be a very close one because but Craig did really well at the start of this week. They managed to get the challenge done with 62 squares, which is better than Kel did. And they only lost the what's it called, the 3 pawn race on time in the end. So if we actually look at what happens here, we are going to see this seems like the classic opening for Kel, this kind of King's Indian set, but we see here knight to c6, and this knight to c6 move does not seem to be working here. I don't know if this is an opening here for playing knight to c6 straight away, but I wouldn't have thought it would have been. Normally you play g6, bishop g7, castles, and then normally knight here. But knight to c6 just allows your knight to just get kicked around, and then white can just take complete control of the centre here. And you can see after this intermezzo here of attacking the queen and forcing it to move out the way, the knight moves back here. And it's done 4 moves when they could have just done the one that goes straight there. And they would have still managed to get this move. And they would have, at this point, been castled on this side and would have been fine. So I don't really understand what the point of playing knight to c6 straight away is. I think just knight to d7 here just makes a lot more sense straight away. Bishop to e3. And knight to b6, and again we're just seeing more moves from this knight, just constant moving this knight around. You need to be moving this bishop out and getting your king castle pretty soon. Bishop to d3, bishop here, and castles finally. And you can see here that white's development here is very strong here. They've got all their pieces out and they've got control of the centre, which is very important. In these kind of games, you might see this quite commonly in this kind of what we call a hyper-modern setup, where we attack the centre from the edge of the board. But usually black has at least some kind of counterplay that can be relatively quick here, like pushing these pawns up the board. But because of them wasting so much time with this knight, They haven't really got that same kind of, gusto in that attack there. Castle's king side, and then we see the move c5, allowing en passant, but I don't think they take it. No, you're not. They play a4. And now the idea is that the knight's going to be kicked around again. It's now gone to 1, 2, 3, 4, and now 5 different squares, and it ends up on a8. This is a worse square than where it started on. It's only got 2 spaces it can move to, and when we have our knights, we want them to be towards the centre, where it can move to 8 different squares all at once. Whereas if it is on the side of the board, it can only move to 2, or in the corner of the board, it can only move to 2. On the side of the board, it can only move to 4. So we really want knight towards the centre. Knight in the corner is not very good for Cal, especially after moving it 5 separate times. The move e5 is played, trying to take better control of the centre. Here, I would have personally played the move h3 here, just trying to start an attack going on this side while black's still lacking in development. The knights and the queen are too far away to do any good job in defending here. The move e5 is not bad, and especially after we see captures here. That now for white is just fine, because now they haven't had to play h3 to kick the bishop out of the way, and now they can play g4 straight away without having to do a preparation move. The knight moves out the way, and here g4 to me looks very well. First of all, playing here and then playing g4 looks very good to me. So you play here first, and we see captures, and the knight coming back. And here I would have been playing something like g4 or f5, just trying to break down the king side over here. We see queen c2 though. This is trying to support this pawn push here. But I think here if you play a move trying to start undermining this bishop somehow, you're going to have a good time, because right now this pawn wall here is quite formidable. If you can find a way of trying to attack this bishop here, I think you'd be doing quite well. Here the engine suggests a move knight to c7, so it's bringing this knight back in to attack this pawn. But then eventually you're going to be trying to attack this bishop over here. The knight comes to c7, and then we see the move f5 here. And then we see the move queen here, captures, and captures. And here there's a very important decision for black to make here. They can either take this pawn back and be even on points, but then their king side is completely destroyed here. There's no pawn there to kind of defend it. Or they can push the king over to this square here. This is what we call an umbrella pawn. The point of an umbrella pawn is it's actually almost better than a regular pawn in some ways, for the cost of having your king having nowhere to move here. What black's now got is a pawn that's untakeable. White now would love to be able to take its own pawn here at some point after they get like more pieces into the attack here, with moves like rook to f3 and then a rook lift over to h3. They'd love to be able to take this pawn, but it's not something that they can do. This pawn is now going to be stuck here forever. The move bishop to d3 I do not like here. The move bishop to d3 here allows this knight move, which I was talking about earlier, to try and attack this bishop. And it doesn't really do much. Attacking this pawn here, or like just, defending the pawn again, it doesn't really need to be done. Black's not going to take that pawn. That pawn's too useful for them. So a move like bishop to d3 doesn't exactly work here. I think there's other moves here that would have been a lot more beneficial for white. Such as maybe even just defending this pawn, this square here, so they can play something like this. The next move they really want to play it. Or potentially they're going to have a move like queen to d3 here, just simply getting their pieces into better positions, simply coming towards the centre, just improving their positions here. Instead, they play this move, as I said before, and now knight to g4 is a threat here. Knight to g4 here is just threatening bishop. We'd have to move out of the way to avoid having a slightly less beneficial trade. But here we see queen to h5 here. Point of queen to h5 here, I think is play the move knight to g4 and attack this square down here. And it's also adding another piece into the defense of black's position here. Bishop to g6, and then we see queen to e5, still focusing on that h2 square, which could be useful later on. The bishop is being attacked, so realistically here the bishop is going to have to move or be defended in some way. We see the move rook to e1. But rook to e1, if you try and defend this bishop here, the move knight to g4 here comes with a fork. It comes with the attack of the bishop here and this h2 square, which the queen would then be attacking, and it'll be a short-lived rest of the game for white there. But if you don't see that, you could see an alternate move of the move knight to here. Which the idea of this is now, after takes, and the king comes to the corner, this pawn is able to be captured, and now it's a relatively even position. Black's king is actually quite safe here. You can see that white's pieces are all focused on the light-coloured squares, and this pawn here is on the light-coloured square as well. But black's king is on the black-coloured square, got a black bishop here. Their defense here seems quite formidable on the dark squares. Whereas, if you actually have a look at the attacking possibilities here, if white can try and get their pieces out into the game and try and maybe, bring their rooks out, push this pawn to give your king an escape square, you're attacking this pawn. white has definitely got equal-ish chances here. I'd say it's pretty much even here. Except here, this pawn is hanging, but also, if it is taken here, a simple mistake has been missed here. Queen takes f1 here is just checkmate in one move here. Getting that back rank checkmate here, attacking the king on this back rank, and simply losing the game there for white there. What white probably should have done here is push this pawn. Just simply push the pawn. It doesn't matter necessarily if it's the most accurate move, but it is a move that's necessary, just to stop you from making any silly mistakes like moving the rook and allowing the queen to capture the rook on f1. So there we go. So that is that game there, and Craig is unfortunately eliminated. Kel goes through, and now we're going to be going on to week 6. Oh, let's go. I was going to say let's go back to start the game. This is not a game. This is the memorization puzzle. And here we see in the game, not in the game, sorry, in the puzzle, we get 1 minute to memorize the position, and we get 1 minute to put all the pieces back on the board. And this is my bread and butter, really. This is kind of my thing I'm most confident on. I'm good at puzzles and I'm good at tactics. Sorry, good at memorization, good at tactics. Sorry. So this is kind of thing that I kind of thrive on, because my memorization for this kind of thing is weirdly good. And I kind of struggle more on making sure that my actual games are fully accurate. So in this position, I look at the pawn structure here. We see that we've got these pawns here, and you can see that all the pawns are on dark coloured squares. This makes it a lot easier to remember where these pieces are. And then we can also have a look at black's pieces, which almost interlock with white's here. So this kind of structure here looks quite distinctive here. I could definitely remember that. And then we've got a very simple kingside castle structure here. Did not mean to draw that arrow. This kingside is castled perfectly here. So in this position, I've managed to remember the pawns, I've managed to remember the kingside castle. I remember I've kicked castle on this side as well. And this bishop here would be fiend castled earlier on in the game. So then I've really only got to remember 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces left now. But I can pretty much do that. How am I going to do that? First of all, these pieces all defend this rook. This rook's in an odd position, so these pieces defending it is a bit weird, so I can try and remember it from that. This queen and bishop are on their starting squares, so that makes it a lot easier to remember. This queen's been pushed over 1, this rook's gone up 1. These are relatively a little bit strange places to put these pieces on. We'd expect to see maybe a move like pawn to b3 here to try and attack this rook, sorry. And these, slightly odd spaces to have the queen and rook on, not actually going into this attack over here. And finally, this knight here is quite a simple, just developed knight. Which is all very difficult to try and remember in a minute. But if you've got experience trying to do these kind of puzzles, or trying to memorize games and stuff along those lines, this isn't too hard. It's not as hard as the week 3 variance puzzle, which was much harder. I had a go at that, and I got 22 out of 26. So I messed up with 4 pieces there, which, again, so much more difficult, especially if you're under the pressure of actually doing it live. That one's going to be an absolute nightmare to try and do. But that's how I did that puzzle. And obviously, I managed to get this one completely done, which I was very proud of at the time. I did not know how I managed to do that. It was very, very strange managing to get the full thing there. But instead, we're now going to go on to the team match, and I had a decision to make here. Do I pick Richie? Do I pick Dima? Or do I pick Cal? Everyone basically said that I definitely made the right decision with picking Richie, and I think I did make the right decision with picking Richie. But I think that there was more of an argument to be made for picking the other people, more than other people think there was. So with Dima, for example, Dima was quite underspoken. They would be able to kind of rein in my my kind of mad attacks that I try and go for. Kel would very much kind of like encourage me to do that, but also I imagine would be a little bit quicker to play their moves than I would be. And Richie, obviously, I've played Richie before. I didn't want to play them again, which was one of the main reasons I actually did pick them. But also, Dima and Kel might not work as well together. And also, I think that Richie's opening seemed to work better for me. I saw they play the French defense. I play the French defense as black, so I'd be happy with that. They play d4, and we play the move e6 in this game. We're going for just a simple kind of Slav defense, kind of. So we just get this structure here where we've got this triangle of pawns here. And this is kind of a very kind of defensive structure. This is mainly because I do not like playing d4 lines. I just don't enjoy it at all. So I kind of just go for what was safe and then kind of just work from that point on. And I was hoping that I could get a time advantage in the opening, which doesn't exactly happen. We play the move h6 to try and kick the bishop out of the way. We castle, takes, and then the knight comes into this centre square here. The point of putting the knight in centre square here is it's got so many different spaces it can move to. It's going to be relatively difficult to try and kick the knight out of the way. And this is going to be our kind of plan to try and attack. It's trying to attack via this knight, trying to attack on this kind of side of the board. Bishop takes here, our queen recaptures, h3, and then the bishop comes out to try and defend this knight, trying to cement it in the centre, so we've got enough pieces trying to defend it. Castle on that side, and then we see the move knight to d7, and rook over here. And you can see we've both got all our pieces developed. The knights and bishops here are all developed. But one thing I would say about this position here is for black, we have managed to get this knight into the centre, but it could be a target for later on. Moves like knight to d2 to try and attack this knight could be a problem later on. Moves like f3 could attack this knight. Probably not straight away because they have a move like knight to g3. But these are concerns that we have. Other concerns that we have is trying to actually figure out how this attack is going to work. If we just kind of leave this knight in the centre and try and develop our pieces, they're going to be able to kind of get their attack going quite quickly here with moves like g4 themselves, kicking our bishop out of the way. And if they are able to bring their pieces over to this side of the board here with moves like knight to e2, knight to g3, attacking this bishop, we're going to have a difficult time trying to defend this position here. We play rook to e8, and then this knight does come back to e2. And this is where we have our long think. You see, we have 11 minutes left on the clock, and after the move g5, we only have 7 minutes left. So we think for about 4 minutes on this move, because I think it's a very important move to try and figure out here. Pushing this pawn in front of the king is risky. And unlike what they said on the show, it's not my kind of aggressive move to play, because it's very difficult to try and calculate what goes on after the move g5. I was the one that suggested it, though, because I thought it was the best move. I didn't think there was much else that would work here. I think g5 is very important to try and push the pawn up to here and try and break apart their defences before they could start trying to attack us. I didn't like the idea of them playing a move like g4 anyway, but I thought that playing the move g5 first of all to entice us, and then we can bring the bishop back. I thought that was better, and then we can start trying to undermine this king side here. Then we see the bishop come back to g6, knight to h2, and then they move f5 here. Gives a question mark, exclamation mark, like a dubious move, I kind of guess. But here, I don't think it's that dubious at all. I think that the idea of trying to push into the position here is going to be incredibly important going later on into this game. Also defends his knight here. So if we do see a move like captures and captures, we can recapture with this pawn. And we've now opened up this f-file here that we can try and use later on. Knight to g3. And now you can see that white's managed to get a king side, which is very well defended here. The knights are actually doing quite a good job at stopping any ideas of advances into the position. So I think the white here might be actually ever so slightly better, maybe. Or at least I'd find the position maybe a little bit easier to play with these knights. I know that it looks a bit strange, but these knights do a very good job at trying to stop anyone from coming in. And I feel like white's going to have an easier time picking the right moves to play here. Move a3 here, trying to start pushing on this side of the board. And our plan here is to try and triple our pieces up this file to try and get some kind of attack going. But as I said before, there's not much here. This knight defends this pawn push up here. The queen, knight, and rooks and king all defend the important squares over here. So I'm not sure in hindsight this plan would have worked here. Which is the reason why, after we play a couple more moves here, the knight comes over to this side of the board. We see this move rook to c5. And at the time, I thought this was an incredibly strange move here. This just traps the rook. Simply stops this rook from having anywhere to go to. Which obviously we completely capitalise on. But the problem is here, is that what we didn't realise here. So they play a4, we play b6 to try and win the rook, and then we see captures, captures, captures. We are a pawn up here. The problem is now our king is now unsafe. Our king is now terrible. We need to try and get our king safe, and it's going to be quite difficult here because they're now going to have they're going to be able to try and use this open file to try and attack our pawns over here. These knights can be able to try and help these pawns push, or the knights come into the position. This pawn's going to try and push at some point. It's going to be maybe a little bit more difficult than I quite anticipated here to try and win this game. Queen c2, bishop to here. I thought this was a solid defense here, but it turns out that I just miscalculated this and completely forgot this pawn only had 2 defenders here. So after we play a couple more moves here, and we see my queen moves out of the way here, this pawn is going to be attacked by another piece here. It's going to be attacked by this knight here. And now here, I'd say white 100% has the advantage here. We can see that they are defending this knight. They are attacking this pawn. These pawns are relatively, like, they look strong, but you can see they've got open files going towards them, and this is going to about to have an open file over here, which they're going to be able to attack down. We see rook a to f7, which was a blunder here because it just leaves this pawn hanging. It's actually very difficult to try and defend this pawn here. Apparently the best move here is h5, which looks mental, just luring the knight over here, and now playing the move rook takes, pawn takes, and then queen takes here. Giving that sacrifice back, so it's now Dima and Kel are now a point up, but now the white's king side is very exposed. We're going to be able to attack that going forward. But don't see that at all, because that looks like an insane move to me. So we play the move rook to f7, continuing on with our plan to try and push up that side of the board. Then we see captures, knight captures, and then we've realised that we kind of have to give up that rook there, because otherwise we're not going to have anything here. We can't really move the rook out of the way, because otherwise we've got no attack going on. You've kind of got to just take this loss here of the pawn. Knight g3 here attacks the rook, and we are now just in a down position here. And now, especially after this queen comes in to give this check here, black's position is perilous. They're going to be bringing the knights in. The rooks might try and come over this way, or potentially try and come in over this way. It's going to be very difficult now for us, as me and Richie, to try and attack here. Queen to g7 is played here. I'm thinking that potentially, if we exchange off, we could maybe draw this endgame, but in hindsight, I don't think we could have. But they play the move queen to h5. And a wave of relief washed over me after queen to h5, because simply that loses a queen. Bishop to f3 here. Rook protects this bishop here, and the queen has nowhere to go to. Can't move to there, can't move to here, can't move to here, can't move to here, can't move to here. Simply the queen is trapped onside the board, and after the knight comes here, we do takes, and we are simply in a winning endgame here. Unfortunately, I've got no idea why. Apparently the PG isn't safe for the endgame here, but simply this is quite an easily winning endgame, really. You can see we only had 22 seconds to 13 seconds left on the clock here. But if we are able to just exchange off pieces, exchange off rooks, for example, we're just a piece up here. This shouldn't be a difficult endgame to win. And we simply just go on to win this game. And Dima and Kel go through to the Eliminator. And we see this final game here, and it's another game of Chess 960. I love Chess 960. I think it's a brilliant format. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the previous chess video where we had, it was week 3, I think it was. You're not allowed to castle. So this first move of just castling queenside is not legal, same with black. So just so you are aware. See the move g3, almost same as the first game where they played g4. And the queen is now attacking the pawn over this side. c6, f4, and knight to b6. And this move here of playing e3, I'm not a big fan of, because it allows this white bishop to come into really nice squares. But this black bishop here is going to be very boxed in. I think maybe a move like e4 would have been much better here, because it now allows this bishop to have a little bit more free reign into the position. But I think e3 kind of blocks themselves in, which isn't my favourite idea. Knight c3, pawn to d5, and knight to b3 now. We're just trying to get all of our pieces out, and we're going to see who manages to get into a better position here. Here, black is going to have to try and castle manually, because they can't castle properly here. A little bit of fun fact about the actual show production here. When we were on the balcony, looked away from position for like a second here, and thought that they'd illegally castled here. They thought after they played the move king to b8, we thought that they'd illegally castled and put their king on the wrong square when the king should have been here, because we weren't told that they weren't allowed to castle beforehand. And we had a big discussion about, oh no, they've done an illegal move, what's going to happen here? And then it turns out there was no illegal move, we just looked away for a second. H takes, F takes, and then queen takes here. As commentary said on the show, the idea here is to trade this queen off here. Kel doesn't particularly like getting queen trades, at least it seems from the show, especially considering the last game where Kel was apprehensive to trade on b2. Was it b2? No, it was g7, sorry. So after captures, and captures, we see that Dima is in a slightly better position. They've managed to win a pawn. But their only problem is their king is really unsafe here. They'd love their king to come over to this side of the board here. They'd love it if they were able to castle, but unfortunately that is not a move that is going to be possible for white. The move knight to f6 comes on the board, just trying to get their pieces more developed, and I think right now they need to be starting to try to get their bishops out in some kind of way. Bring this bishop out this side, maybe, which I think is what we see here. Yeah, bishop to d7, and they give this bishop check here to try and attack this weak king over here. The king moves to d2, with the idea probably being to move this rook over and then move this king back over this side of the board. So we see rook to h2 and then defending this bishop with this rook. Now this king wants to run away to this side of the board and basically not be disturbed. Bishop to g7 and knight to d1. Here, king to c1 seems like an imperative move to play here, just getting that king safe. This bishop isn't under threat right now, just king to c1 seems like it must be an imperative move to play here. Knight to d1 does defend this, but it doesn't really do a good job of it, because now this bishop can take this this knight, And after the king tries to run to safety, this rook will be its only defender, and it will also be the bishop's only defender, so this won't work exactly. The knight comes into here, and we see captures, 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 and Dima is now 2 pawns up. They managed to, however, win this pawn back by capturing it, and this bishop is now pinned, so it cannot move out of the way. Again, king c1 here. You need to start running your king. Instead of trying to attack this bishop here, just run the king away into the corner, stop it from being out into the game, and then you can also then exchange bishops off afterwards. But instead we see captures and then captures with the knight here. Rook captures is very important. This might be the most important move of the game. Dima needs to capture this bishop with the rook. Because after here, captures, hold on, let's have a look, captures, and then if they capture back, and then capture back here, simply put, Dima is a pawn up here, and they're in a winning endgame here. They've got this passed pawn here. It's going to be a much easier game to win with 1 rook on the board rather than 2. This is generally the case for endgames. You normally want to have 1 rook on the board rather than 2 if you are the team that is up. But instead of that, they decide to capture back with the knight. And now they've got a bigger problem here. Their pieces are all trying to defend each other. And now, if anything kind of breaks this delicate ecosystem here of trying to move like pieces out of the way, they're just going to lose pieces. So this bishop now attacks this knight. If this knight now moves out of the way, which they do play, they play the move knight to d1. This knight is just now on pre. And now we can simply see that the white king is now under a lot of pressure. This rook's going to come down to the 2nd rank as well and start trying to come over to this side of the board. Unfortunately, the move g4 here loses simply because of the move rook to c2, king to b1, rook takes c3 here, stopping the king from coming this way, but it is a check with the bishop. So the king is forced to go to a1, and then they have checkmate on this back rank. Slightly slower variation seen here of just the move rook to d2. But still, you get the same result here of captures, 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 just taking each of these individually. And you end up with this checkmate in the back corner. If you're wondering why they didn't take this knight, it's because they're also being checked with the bishop here. So we see the king is now checkmated in the corner of the board here. The rook blocks that. They cannot take the rook. And this square on b1 is also blocked off. So that is the end of episode 6. Dima is eliminated. It's now going through to the final 6. It is going to be me, Kel, and Richie from my group. And it's going to be not Claire, not Kai, and so it's going to be Navi. It's going to be, who else is there? It's going to be Navi, Lula, and Caitlin. That's who the other 3 from the other group are. Going through to the semi-finals. So this is all very exciting. I did not expect to get through the semi-finals when I signed up for the show at all. But, you know, exciting times ahead. We're going to see how that goes. I hope I'm going to see you guys next week for more Chess Masters content. As I said at the start, if you did like the video, please make sure you like and subscribe. It means a lot to me, so that would be much appreciated. And yeah, that's basically everything for today's video. I hope to see you next week. Goodbye.